Hi, I'm Greg.
And I'm Leanne. Welcome to the Empowered Poly Podcast,
where we give you the tools to help you feel more empowered
in your polyamorous and consensually non-monogamous relationships,
sharing what we've learned as relationship coaches and as individuals.
Empowered Poly is LGBTQ+, alternative lifestyle, and kink friendly.
Thank you for joining us
and enjoy the show.
Hello, and welcome to episode number 48 of the Empowered Poly Podcast. Today, we're going to talk about Poly Under Duress. So
yes,
that's quite a hot topic.
You gonna finish that sentence?
No, I'm not gonna. I am not gonna finish that sentence because I don't know what the. Yeah, no, I'm not gonna finish that sentence.
So it is a hot topic.
It is a hot topic. It's a bit of a hot take too, I think, that you have specifically and that I agree with. But why don't you share a little bit more about what happened, what came about, and where you're at with it?
Yeah. Okay. As many of you probably know, I am in a lot of the Facebook support groups for relationships particular to polyamory and non-monogamy. And in those groups recently, I have seen a lot of posts describing what people are calling poly under duress. And my take on that, should I get into that right now? Or should we just talk about what that is?
I think let's talk about what duress is. I mean, that's probably a good place to start, don't you think?
Yes, I do.
Yeah. So my understanding of duress is anytime somebody tries to coerce, manipulate, or force you to do something under threat.
Yeah, and it's something that you wouldn't do, and it's against your better judgment, is my understanding as well.
Mm-hmm. Right. Mm-hmm. And so what is a threat and what isn't a threat?
I think here's where a lot of the disparity comes from what my perspective is and maybe other people's perspective. Threats can take on a lot of different forms, but I think a threat should have a fairly serious, unavoidable consequence. Out in the wild, we understand threats to be threat to physical harm. In this case, it might also be threat to loss of home or the ability to support oneself financially, that kind of thing. I think those are the serious threats. Threat to access to children. When we're talking about duress, those poly under duress situations are quite real, quite serious, and they do absolutely exist. Mm-hmm. And I think it's really important to talk about that today. Mm-hmm. And also to talk about something that I'm calling poly under pressure, which is different than poly under duress. And mm-hmm. pressure is much different than threat. It can be quite serious in terms of consequences, in terms of ending a relationship, for example, but the threat isn't to your ability to survive, for example, or to have access to your kids, or to, continue to have access to food and shelter, right? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Is there anything you want to add to that?
I think it's important to get a clear understanding. Like the way my brain works is I want to know what a threat looks like versus what a threat doesn't look like. So mm-hmm. I think for me, if your partner comes to you and says, "Hey, I've decided I'm polyamorous. I want to start dating other people and having intimate relationships with them." And they tell you that you have to be on board with that, or they are going to try to constrain you, manipulate you, or coerce you in some way into being on board with that is against your better judgment or some way and somehow harmful to you, then I think that's duress. Now, even further to that, what is and what isn't harmful, right? It could feel harmful. It could feel like it hurts like a motherfucker, for sure. Absolutely. But is it actually harmful? Is it actually a threat? Is it actually under duress? And so I think that's mm-hmm. what I think we want to focus on today is what's the actual difference between those two things? What's pressure? What's duress? So I think for me, it's quite a nuanced experience. I don't think it's black and white. And when you and I were talking about doing this podcast, we wanted to acknowledge that there are people in the world who do think it is very black and white, who do have a
Mhm.
very hard line about this, right? It is, that there is a line in the sand and they've drawn it, and we want to respect that, right? That's
Absolutely.
And if you're one of those people and you want to have that conversation with us, drop it in the chat, in the comments, or send us an email or whatever. We want to hear
Mhm.
your perspective. So we're not trying to judge one way or the other. I think for you and I both, semantics are very important.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so
Yeah.
when we use language like duress, we need to make sure it's actually duress
Mhm.
and not just pressure,
For
which is
us.
different
For
for
us.
us.
And
For
when we're
us.
talking with clients, we often try to differentiate those terms to help empower them, to
Right.
help them see that while it feels like a threat to their safety, well-being, etc., there's lots of choices yet for them to make, and that's sort of our job. And in that work, I think over the last 5 years, we really learned a lot about the gray areas, the places where people think they don't have choice, but they do.
Mm-hmm.
If we
Yeah.
look a little further, if we delve a little deeper, right?
Right.
And
That's
we
why we
want to
call it
empower people. Yeah,
That's why we call it empowered poly, right? That's what we're all
exactly.
about. It's empowering you to make the decisions and for you in empowering you to not only be able to make the decisions that are right for you, but also recognizing your choices in those situations, right? That's the important part. So
Yeah,
why don't we? I think I'm going to jump into an example if you're okay with that.
absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, so one of the most common examples, I'm not saying this happens all the time, but one of the most common examples that we see is a husband and a wife. Okay. And the husband says, hey, I want to be polyamorous. Right. Now, the wife is a stay at home mother who is financially supported by the husband. And they have, let's say, 3 kids. The wife is a stay at home mom, and she's essentially her job, right? Her role, which is a very important job and a very important role, is to raise the children and look after the house and all of that stuff. That is the agreement that they have come up with, whether that's spoken or unspoken. That's the agreement. And that's the nature of their relationship. Or maybe she is working, but she doesn't make as much as he does, or their finances is so enmeshed that to pull them apart would put her in a very challenging and difficult and stressful situation, right?
Mhm.
So that can feel like duress. Emotionally, that can feel like you don't have any options,
Mhm.
right? Because your partner is saying to you, hey, I want to do something different than what we've agreed to. But let's take the poly out of it for a second and let's replace the poly with moving. Maybe your
Mhm.
partner comes to you and says, "Oh my God, I got a promotion, I got a raise. I think it's fantastic, and I want to move to the other side of the country."
Mhm.
Would we say that's duress?
No, and so here's the thing. There's first I want to caveat everything that is said today with decide for yourself. Decide for yourself if these words work for you.
Right.
If
Yeah,
they
that's a good point.
feel, yeah, if they feel disempowering, it's not for you. If they feel empowering, it's for you,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah, that's a great point. Thanks
Yeah.
for bringing that up.
When we are talking about choices like moving across the country, that stay-at-home mom still has decisions to make, still has options because they can choose to separate or divorce and get alimony and child support. And that will help them move into a different phase of life where they are more able to support themselves, given that they're able-bodied and capable of working. Now,
Mhm.
there are cases where it might be duress if that stay-at-home mom isn't capable of working for some reason.
Mhm. Yeah.
I'm going to also challenge that in a way as a disabled person who has worked. and has certain limitations on my work, right? So there's work I can do, there's work I can't do. I had to give up a teaching career because I'm not able to do that, but I can coach. And so there's still probably choices available in terms of what type of employment that person can engage in, even if they have a disability, depending on what the disability is and the severity of it. Right. So there's all that gray area in there in terms of, is it duress or not? Um,
even though even though when you're in it and you're the one that's being impacted by this other person's decision, it can feel absolutely devastating. It can feel absolutely critically devastating. And so we want
yeah,
to acknowledge that we're not trying to diminish or um or ignore that experience for people, right?
right,
You know,
right.
you can feel trapped, you can feel distressed, you can feel hurt, you can feel angry, you can feel devastated by these decisions. Just like you might feel hurt, angry, upset, and devastated if your partner came to you and said that they were gay
Yeah.
or that they were trans. The fundamental agreements about who we are, our identity, and how we relate can often really, really challenge us when we're not the ones doing the change, right? Making the change, right? And so we can think to ourselves, oh shit, I don't have any choice here, right? But you do actually. You don't have to be trans too. You don't have to be gay. You
And you
don't
don't
have
have
to
to
move,
move. Hmm.
right? If your partner starts smoking, you don't have to start smoking,
Hmm.
right? So with poly, there's no difference. You don't have to be polyamorous, right? Now,
Hmm.
with poly, there is an intimacy element that isn't incorporated into the other examples, of course. But the reality is that their decision is not a reflection on you as a person and your
Yes.
value and your worth, right? Or your choices, right? And again, I think we're going to repeat this a lot during this particular episode because we want it to be completely clear that we are not talking about situations, life threatening situations, or any of that. We're talking about situations, the overarching normalcy of situations that we see with couples when we see people using under duress as the language that they're trying to explain the situation in.
I want to talk to that piece about normalcy, the common sort of experiences that we see in our clients, or maybe that we've even experienced ourselves, and the distress level. So, something that we work with our clients on is understanding their nervous system, understanding how to regulate themselves so that they're able to get out of the reactivity of the moment
I don't
into a
panic.
reasoning, wise mind. And from there, make decisions. And I think that work that we've been doing is really helpful with our clients in creating that sense of, I do have some control here over my decisions for myself,
Mm-hmm.
and that I don't have to be the same as my partner, and that my partner's decision is for themselves, and I can still even support that in some ways while taking care of myself. And
Mm-hmm.
there's a real there's there's an important balance, I think, that we help people get to. And a lot of the times that starts with disentangling, which is something that we work a lot on, and actually we have a course on. So if you're interested in the course, you can find it at empoweredpoly.ca. Look for the gold star. Little plug. But it's an incredibly important part of understanding how to have a healthy relationship. So often when we're talking about poly under duress, we're talking about relationships that already struggle with that healthy balance.
Mm-hmm.
They've set it up in some ways for enmeshment and codependency, where one person is very reliant on the other. And then when things change, for whatever reason, poly being one that is possible, but it could be anything. It could be that they were poly and now that person wants to go back to monogamy. It
Mm-hmm.
could be that they become aware of their own sexual preferences and they want to explore that, or they shut down sexually, realizing that they don't want to explore that, that's not part of where they want to go with their lives from this point
Mhm.
forward. And so there's so many changes that we witness in long-term relationships that are part of the growth of a human and cause stress in the relationship, right? It's
Mhm.
stressful and distressing and can rupture some things and also help repair other things. Maybe that person who is asking to be poly has sat on that for 20, 30 years. They've struggled with it. They've had the internal dialogue. They've repressed their desires. They've tried to say, I'm not this
Mhm.
for so long. And now they're coming out to their partner and their partner is distressed, which distresses them, which puts stress on the relationship, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's kind of like an ongoing kind of waterfall. And then from there, there's a place for that poly person and their partner to come to some sort of understanding if they want to,
Yeah.
and negotiate if
Yeah.
they don't.
Yeah, that's all. Those are all. I was enthralled listening to you. So thank you. I
Well,
love that. I love that. So we've discussed what it is, but let's talk about what it isn't. Right. So
yeah,
using that same scenario, or sorry, we've discussed what it isn't. Let's talk about what it is. So
yeah.
using that same scenario with the husband and wife,
Mm-hmm,
the husband is the primary financial support, and the
mm-hmm.
wife is a stay-at-home mom who looks after three kids. And so duress would be the husband going to the wife and saying, I am poly and you're going to like it. You're going to deal with it whether you like it or not. And if you don't deal with it, then I'm going to kick you out of the home and I'm going to take away the kids. I'm
And
going
give you
to
nothing.
give you nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Right. That is duress. Right.
That is duress.
That is duress, even though technically, legally, it wouldn't be possible, but still, that's duress. Or
Wouldn't be possible, and yet it still happens. So,
yeah, exactly. Or
yeah.
it could be also duress in such a way that they put so many constraints on you that you're unable to live your life the way you want to, right? So let's say it's the other way around. Let's say the wife is the one who decides to become poly
Mm-hmm,
and the husband isn't on board with it,
mm-hmm.
right? You know, that there could still be duress in that situation where the husband's like, well, if you decide to do this, then I'm going to leave you and I'm going to take all my money with me and I'm going to, kick you out of the home, et cetera, or I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, right? That's duress. That is a threat. They are trying to constrain you in some way or coerce you in some way into doing something. And that can also happen over time in little ways as well, right?
Yeah,
You know,
like the
they could
frog in the boiling water, right? It doesn't have to
Yeah, yeah,
happen all at
exactly. The
once.
frog. Yeah, exactly. Like we hear all the time about people who are like, my partner is poly, and I can't deal with it. I can't handle it anymore. I keep making requests, and they keep telling me those requests are unreasonable, et cetera, et cetera. And they're just going about their business. They're in no way, shape, or form being a compassionate partner. All of that is duress related. All of that is if they're ignoring your boundaries completely, if they're if they're if they're trying to manipulate or coerce you in some way into accepting or agreeing to this, that's duress.
Yeah, and I think those coercion moments can happen in subtle ways. It doesn't have to be really overt, you
Mm-hmm.
know, where they start to I don't know, withdraw affection, attention,
But
financial
that's not,
support.
but okay, so affection and attention, right? Here's the thing affection and attention, in my opinion, and this might be a hot take,
Are
be
not
ready for the
threats,
comments, are not threats.
right?
They are not threats. They are not threats to harm you.
So it depends on how it's done, I think. And this is sort of the gray area of this delineation. I think
Yeah,
there's
yeah.
this section between duress and pressure,
Mhm.
that is the coercive, manipulative, uh, hurtful, harmful, eventually over time behavior.
Mhm.
Where, for example, boundaries are crossed, boundaries are crossed, boundaries are crossed, boundaries are crossed. And that person who is objecting to their boundaries being crossed is being gaslit over time. And so that becomes that manipulation toxicity in the communication to get what they want. They're gaslighting their partner, right? And
Is that duress though?
I would say there are forms of duress that occur in that gray area,
Right. So when I
depending
think,
on the person and depending on their capacity and resiliency and ability to see it for what it is.
Mhm.
It can
I
turn
think
into
back,
really, really serious mental health harm, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah. I think back to times when I felt trapped, right, in relationships. I think
Yeah.
back to times when I felt like I didn't have choices,
Yeah.
right? And I know I'm the most privileged human being on the planet. I get it. I'm white, I'm male, I was lucky enough to be born in North America. So I don't even get to understand. I can't even comprehend the levels of whoa, what's
Disadvantage.
disadvantage that others have experienced. I can't even begin to comprehend that. So I get it. But and rather, I am also someone who has experienced mental health challenges, mental health issues, to a degree that has been harmful to myself and to others. So I get it. I do. And I also think, though, that duress specifically from a semantics point is a very specific set of circumstances. It's a very specific set of things that have to happen in order for it to be considered duress.
Yeah. So, in that same kind of gray area between the two terminologies, uh, in that space of coercion, manipulation, trying to get what you want, I want to be clear. Most of us use manipulation consciously or unconsciously to get what we want from a place of healthy relating, even because we understand the human mind. So, an example of that would be I want to have, let's say, a night out with my friends, and there's a conflict with childcare with my partner, and I want my partner to stay home and take care of the kids, even though they had plans, right? So we have a conflict, and I might gently broach the topic. The gentle broaching of the topic is a form of manipulation. It's recognizing how my partner works, our dynamic works, how our communication works best. If I come at it too forcefully, too aggressively, too, I want to do this, my partner's going to get defensive and say no. Understanding the human mind creates an awareness, which is a form of, and this is manipulation tactics and strategies aside, this is a form of manipulation in that we are changing, modulating, controlling our tone, our words, our approach, right? Because we want something. It's not a serious something. If I don't get to go out with my friends, it's not the end of the world. It's just something I want. So
Right.
I want to be clear that in this sort of gray area, these forms of communication, if you are triggered, if you have trauma, if you have a history with someone else that you're projecting onto the situation, you can hear someone's modulated tone as they come with a request and say, "You're manipulating me." And you're kind of right, but
Mm,
it's
yeah.
not a tactic that is harmful. It is a tactic that is, it's a strategy that's being used by someone who's aware of how you work, how to communicate
Yeah.
well. We could say nonviolent communication is manipulation, right?
Mm,
we're
Yeah.
changing our terminology, our approach in order to get something that we want.
Right. This is interesting because I disagree with you.
Okay, disagree.
Yeah. Can I share why?
Yeah,
So manipulation to me is control or influence to try to get somebody to do something that you want them to do, through being unfair or unscrupulous. That's what I think of when I think of manipulation.
you
As
looked
the
it up,
from the
didn't you?
I did, through the concept of it, because I was like, this doesn't sit right with me. So
Hmm.
there's also manipulate, to move something, or manipulate the dial on a radio, right? That's technically manipulation as well. But the second definition is to try to control or influence a person, or a situation, unfairly or unscrupulously, right? And so I don't think what you're describing is unfair or unscrupulous. I
Okay.
think what you're describing is you saying, hey, this is something that's important to me, and I want to talk to my partner about it. So how do I do, right? Intention, audience, environment, right? What's my audience? Who's my audience here? How do I bring this up to my partner in a way that they will hear it?
Yeah.
That's
And
not
when?
that is And when that is not
Yeah.
manipulation. To me, that's being compassionate. To me, that's being empathetic. To me, that's being healthy, because you're not just simply fucking truth
Oh, it
bombing them all
is.
the time.
Yeah, I think it's healthy too.
But I don't think it's a form of manipulation. I think manipulation in and of itself is when you're doing something unscrupulously or unfairly, right?
Right.
That to me is
So
manipulating.
would it then, I'm going to posit something here that you might disagree with. If I have all that knowledge about nonviolent communication, how the mind works, phrasing, timing, and audience, etc., I bring all that wealth of knowledge to bear on this situation. And my partner is almost helpless in the face of all of that because I'm so good at it. So I have an unfair advantage. I have knowledge and awareness that maybe my partner does not have, right?
Mhm.
And I'm
I, I,
speaking I'm speaking to this from a place of personal experience. So I
mhm.
have been in a situation where I have come to the table with a lot of awareness of how to get what I want, and it's not meant to be unscrupulous. It's not meant to be harmful. It's just I want this thing.
That's
I want it,
that's that's the point, though. That's the point,
but it
is
is
the intention.
unfair
The intention.
because I
But you're
have the
not doing
knowledge.
it. You're not doing it unfairly. You're not doing it unscrupulously. You can have the knowledge, right? That's like saying that, if you're getting into a car and you're the one driving because the other person doesn't really doesn't drive as well as you do, or isn't as capable a driver as you are,
Or
but
doesn't
you
have a
choose to,
license.
or doesn't have a license even, right? That's not manipulation. If you're driving all the time because the other person can't, that's not manipulation, in my opinion. It
It
just
could
means
be
that you have a
manipulation if
skill
you're
set that they don't. If they want to learn how to drive, then learn how to drive, and then they can drive. If they want to learn these skills and these tools, then they can learn the same skills and the same tools that you have,
yeah.
and thereby have equity in that component, that part of the relationship, right? And so I think for me, what it boils down to is intent. Are you trying to do something in a way that is unfair, right? Like, I don't know, I can't think of another example off the top of my head, and I feel a bit stupid for that, but um you you're doing something with the intention of being unfair to get what you want at the expense of somebody else. That's what I think manipulation is.
I see.
That's the unfair
So
part. That's the unscrupulous part.
I
I
want to
don't
go
give a
back.
shit about what you actually want,
I
right?
want to
I
go
don't give a
back.
shit about how you feel about this. I'm going to get what I want, and I'm going to do it in any way I can, or any way I need to. That's manipulation.
Fair.
So
Okay.
anyway, I think we got a little off track, but
No, I
yeah.
want to go back because I
Oh,
have a point to make about both of those things that you said. So the driving
okay.
thing, it is unfair if you are the driver and you consistently drive the way you want to at the speed you want to, which is a style that the other person finds uncomfortable for them.
Yeah.
It is unfair if you decide the destination, how we're
Mm-hmm.
going to get there, how long it's going to take us,
Absolutely.
right? And that
All of that.
person is kind of at the mercy of those decisions, especially if you're not listening. That if you're not listening, um, because you have a very specific thing that you want to do, like you want to travel to another province and you want to take the south route instead of the north route, and they don't want to do that, and you're like, well, I'm driving. It's unfair to that person. They don't really have a say, right? Is it harmful? It depends. It depends on the person. It depends on their circumstances. It depends on why they don't want to go south. Maybe they
Mhm.
don't want to travel through their old hometown that brings up all their triggers. I don't know. Um, is it is it just is it just the way it is because they're the driver and you kind of have to deal with it and it's unfair? Kind of sometimes,
Mhm.
right? And so what I'm saying is that there's that still that gray nebulous area. There are types of manipulation, I think, with very intelligent people who who bring all of their knowledge and awareness to a conversation and they run roughshod over their partners because they're wordsmiths. They can use all the language. They know how to get around stuff, right? That's
Mhm.
unfair. Is it harmful? That's for the other person to decide, right? I think that there's loads of manipulation that is part of just regular everyday life because I don't see manipulation as being always unscrupulous, but it is sometimes unfair because somebody has better abilities,
Mhm.
right? And I've been also the person who's been manipulated by somebody who's really good at talking
Right.
and they just don't give up and they keep going round and round and finally you're like, okay, you know, it's, I gotta let this one be, right? Even though I don't want to. Um,
But you still have a choice in that. That's what I'm saying. So anyway, yeah, I
yeah,
hear you totally, totally hear you. I can see your side of things, though I don't completely
that's all I
agree
wanted you
with
to say. See, I've been manipulating you the whole time to get those words out of you.
it. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So anyway, so let's get back to the
Topic at
um
hand.
to yeah, to the topic at hand, though it does relate to what we're talking about, obviously, which
Mhm,
is it is the duress of, what is duress, right? What constitutes duress? There's the obvious things, threat of life and body and limb and harm and all of that stuff, right? And then
yeah.
there's the stuff that we've talked about, which is more insidious in nature, which is
Mhm,
sort of happens over time, like a frog in boiling water, right? Those can all be interpreted as situations under duress, right?
mhm.
But what is not duress is somebody coming to you and saying that they have changed their mind about something and they want to do something a different way.
Or they want to renegotiate an agreement.
Yes. Right. And in the case of them changing the fundamental structure of your relationship, that is ultimately what it comes down to, is they are trying to renegotiate the agreement, and they might not have the language, they might not have the tools to do that, and it might be incredibly awkward and weird and dumb and stupid and hurtful and all of those other things, and it could be just
Mhm,
completely a mess, right?
mhm.
But that doesn't make it duress.
Yep. And I want to also say if you are in a situation of real duress, get some help.
Yes.
Get some help, please. Reach out to your local shelter or social worker, or even talk to someone on a health line, distress line, so that you have some sort of level of support and you can find your way out of it.
Yeah, and speak up when it's safe to do so in your situation, in your
Mm-hmm.
relationship. And also, if you don't want to be in a relationship with somebody who's poly, and you think you don't have a choice, then we encourage you to reach out to us
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
and talk to us, because we have not only have we personally been in those situations, but we've also dealt with hundreds of people who have been in those situations. And
Mm-hmm.
so we would be happy to talk with you about it and help you discover what your choices actually are, because I think you'd
Right.
be surprised to find out that you do have choice, even though it doesn't seem obvious in the moment, right?
Right.
And so
And
I
part of
think,
that might, sorry, go ahead.
no, that's okay. And I think part of that, and maybe we're going to say the same thing actually, is the emotional attachment piece, right? The entanglement of the relationship, and then and the level of codependency or enmeshment rather that you have in your relationship. If you are completely dependent on your partner for financial security, I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to say that that's a problem with or without poly. I'm going to say that
Absolutely.
I'm going to say that that puts you at risk with or without poly,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so I would encourage you to slowly over time change that, make decisions that align with you feeling more empowered financially, whether that's maybe getting a part-time job, whether that's working from home if you're a stay-at-home mom, start an OnlyFans, I don't know, whatever, like whatever it is that you need to do, get some part-time work over, that a work from home type thing, right? All sorts
Mm-hmm.
of things that you can do in order to empower you financially, right?
Yeah, and open your own account.
And open your own account. Have I mean, we have separate accounts for a reason.
Yeah.
So I would encourage you, if you feel or think that you are being in some way manipulated, coerced, or
Threatened.
manipulated or coerced from a or threatened from a financial standpoint,
Mm-hmm.
to take actionable steps to change that for yourself,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that doesn't matter what gender you are. It makes no difference what gender
Right.
you are.
No.
Okay. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that we want to acknowledge that there is an element of shock and surprise here, which is often referred to as polybombing. And that's a whole
Sometimes.
other, sometimes, yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes there's an element of shock and surprise here that can, again, often feel threatening, to the point to where you think that you're actually under duress and this person is trying to coerce you or manipulate you or force you into doing something you don't want to do. But again, you need to take a look at the actual situation and try to define, is this person actually trying to force me to do something against my will? And if they are, what are my choices? What actionable steps can I take to get away from the situation that I don't want to be in?
Mm-hmm.
Right. I would encourage people too to think about it like this. If it's poly related or non-monogamy related, I would encourage you to ask yourself the question, would I feel the same way if my partner was telling me that they were gay? Would I feel the same way if my partner were telling me that they were trans? Would I feel the same way if my partner were telling me that they wanted to start smoking or that they wanted to move,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because what that'll do is that'll help you, because oftentimes people be like, oh, my partner's gay, so it's not really about me, because I can't give that to them. I can't do that for them. I can't give them that same sex experience because I'm not the same sex as them,
Mm-hmm.
right? Or my partner's
In those
trans.
hetero relationships. Yeah.
Exactly, exactly. Or my partner is, yeah, I mean, you're in a gay relationship, you're, homosexual relationship, and then the partner says, hey, I want to be bi, right?
Mm-hmm.
Does that bother you too? Because there are things that you're not capable of giving. What that will do is that will help you determine what the core root of the problem is, what the core root of the issue and struggle and challenge that you're having is, which more than likely is going to be a sense of insecurity around not being enough for your partner, or your partner leaving you because they found something better or someone better.
Yeah. And I want to also add that there could be that feeling of betrayal because this isn't what we agreed to.
Yep.
Um, when I'm working with clients, I really try to remind them that in long-term relationships, we're going to see a lot of changes, a lot of changes.
Mm-hmm.
Jobs will change, needs will change, desire will change. Even how we interact will change, health will change, capacity will change. And with every single different version of our relationship, we're going to be grieving in some ways what was and learning to work with what is, or deciding that that's not for us.
And
When
but that is a way of learning to work with what is.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Right? The decision to recognize, hey, wait a minute, this really isn't for me,
Mm-hmm.
right? That's the first step, really, to working with what is
For
in
some
many
people in
ways.
some situations, yeah.
Yeah.
And so it's like, I think the attachment to sameness and lack of change keeps us really dysregulated in a lot of long-term relationships,
Mhm.
because it feels like, well, there's another change. Oh, there's another change. You know what I mean? It just feels like,
Yeah. Yeah.
and so part of the work is going to be learning how to cope with change in your relationships as people grow, as they morph. And if they're
Mhm.
not changing and growing and they're staying the same, and that makes you happy, great. You don't have
Right.
those issues. You're probably not listening anymore.
Well, so one of the things that happens quite often is that the person who is the most vulnerable in this situation, usually the person that didn't agree or didn't advocate for the change in the relationship
Mhm.
from mono to poly, um, usually doesn't recognize oftentimes that they do have ways that they can manage it through boundaries, right? You can
Mhm.
say, that's fine. You can do what you want to do. I don't want to know details. I don't want to know. I don't want partners in the home. I don't want you having sex with other people in our home. You could make requests based upon those boundaries and talk with your partner. When it becomes problematic is when your partner then agrees to those boundaries or those requests, and you guys put negotiation or you put agreements in place, and they
Mhm.
continue to ignore them.
Right.
They continue to just pretend like they're not there, or they gaslight you into thinking that they didn't actually agree to it.
Mhm.
Right? That's when it becomes problematic. That's when it could be like if they're intentionally doing that. If they're saying, "Yeah, I agree not to have sex with anybody in our home," and then you come home 5 times and they're having sex with somebody else on the couch,
Doesn't have to
you
be
know,
5 times.
whatever, 2 times, 3 times, whatever it is, right?
Once.
Once, sure, yeah,
You're
you
broken the
know,
agreement.
yeah, you've broken the agreement, right? I was trying to give them the benefit of the doubt, but that's fair. You're right. Once and the agreement's broke, right? And then so they can, if they continue to ignore or step over your boundaries, and then if they continue to not honor their part of agreements that they have made, that's problematic,
Mhm.
right? That is
Would
poly under pressure.
would you say that's poly under duress?
No, I would say it's poly under pressure.
Mhm. And there's lots of forms of poly under pressure too, where people might, you know, bring up the topic and then drop the topic and then bring up the topic and drop the topic and bring it up and drop it over decades.
Yeah, right.
And finally kind of wear down their partner into agreement. Now, the truth is you can't really do that unless they want you to, unless they allow that.
They
Or unless
being
they
who?
don't have the capability of saying no to you after 20 years of you asking.
They who?
The mono person, right?
Okay. All right.
So if they are feeling that pressure over time, it can wear them down.
Right. But
And
also,
that's poly under
sorry,
pressure, though.
that's
And
poly
it's
under
up to
pressure.
them to say at a certain point, I am no longer going to entertain this topic with you. If you bring it up again,
I'm not going to respond,
I'm out, right?
or
I'm
I'm
out of the
out, or
conversation. I'm out of the relationship, whatever
I'm out
boundary
of the
you want to
room.
set.
Right. Right. That to me is the work of disentangling. That to me is the work of saying this. So for those that don't know, in the simplest form, the work of disentangling is discovering what's yours, what's your partner's and what is yours together to manage. So in this situation, right, what are you responsible for? Right?
Mm-hmm.
You aren't responsible for your partner continuing to want to bring up the topic, but you are responsible for setting a boundary saying, I don't want to talk about this anymore. And if you continue to bring it up, I'm just going to leave the room without responding to you.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And you can also say in that same sentence, I don't want to be poly and I don't want to be in a relationship with somebody who decides to be poly.
Yeah.
And
And
so
if you
these are the
choose that
things
for
that
yourself,
these are the things
then we'll
I'm
end the
going to
relationship.
do. Right. Exactly. These are the things I'm going to do for my own self. That is not duress. You're not asking the person to make any changes. You're not telling them that they need to change or else. You're not saying that you need to change for me, or you're not saying that you need to change or you will lose things like children, money, home, right? Job,
Mm-hmm.
right? All of that stuff, right? That's
Mm-hmm.
just the nature of healthy relating, frankly. And it doesn't feel healthy sometimes, but it really is.
I want to pinpoint what you just said, which is, you know, the threat of losing all those important things. I think what people often ascribe poly under duress to are situations where the threat is the loss of the relationship. But I
Mm.
want to bring up that the loss of the relationship is ever present. It's ever present every single day.
Everything ends, whether by death or decision.
Right. And so when we're talking about poly under pressure, we have to bring that up as this is part of the pressure of being in any relationship at any time, all the time. You could lose that friendship. You could lose your parent. You could lose a relationship with your child. You could lose a partner to death or to deciding not to be with you, right? It's ever present. And I know that feels nihilistic and terrible and awful, but it's true. And when we come to terms with that truth, we recognize that it is not duress to say, if you continue down this path or if you continue with this behavior and I can't handle it, I'm going to step out of this relationship. That's healthy relating for myself and for you. If I stay and I am continually resentful and and hurt and distressed and I'm taking it out on myself. Maybe I'm mad at myself, maybe I'm depressed, maybe I'm taking it out on you in, passive aggressive ways or really aggressive ways, who knows. If I stay, I am existing in that and agreeing to that by staying.
You're also staying in the relationship with a set of expectations that are causing you those distressful feelings, the resentment, the anger, the frustration, all of that stuff, because you're expecting your partner to be different. You're
Yeah,
expecting
that's
somebody
usually
else
at
to
the
make the
heart of it.
change.
Yeah,
It
the
really
heart.
is at the heart
Yeah,
of it, right? And
yeah.
you said that it might be nihilistic to think that. I don't. Maybe it is. I don't remember the definition of nihilism off the top of my head, but I think it's incredibly empowering and free to recognize that everything ends. And part of the reason that we're in relationships is because of the risk. The nature of it is the very nature of risk involved in relating is what makes it exciting. It's what brings
And
about
precious.
and precious. And that's, you can't have both of those things, right?
Yeah.
You can't have a sense of full 100% security in a relationship and also have intimacy. They just can't exist together. You have to have that sense of there's got to be some risk. There's got to be some element of end at some point. And like I said, it's whether it's by death or by decision doesn't really matter. The fact is that it is impermanent.
Everything's impermanent.
Everything is, right? Exactly.
Yeah,
The
like,
sweater, I love my sweater, but it's impermanent. It might not be in my life. But like really, it is. I
yeah.
mean, I love you. I love you so much and in so many different ways. But I recognize that you could wake up tomorrow and go, holy fuck, Greg, you're an asshole, and I don't want to be in a relationship with you anymore. That's fair, right? You're entitled to make that choice. Or you're entitled to say, you know what, I've decided that I want something different out of life, and I'm gonna go fucking sailing in Bali for the next 10 years, right? And I don't want to go. I can't imagine ever saying no to that, but I don't want to go, right?
Yeah.
That creates a shift. So if you are in a situation where somebody comes to you and says they are poly, and your reaction is so different than what it might be if they said they wanted to move to Bali, or if they wanted to, there are fundamental reasons for that. And if you want, you can do that work. You can decide for yourself whether or not that work is important to you and whether or not that work will serve you. But
Yeah.
just recognize that that's not duress,
Right.
right?
Yeah, because the natural, normal state of all relationships is that there is always a form of stress and pressure because we're not each other. We're not the same people as each other. We will disappoint each other. We will be surprised by each other's choices. We will, change and morph and grow, and things will challenge the norm that we've experienced in the past. And some of
Yeah.
that work will be, yeah, we need to grieve what we lost. Absolutely. If we're making a big change, but also stay present in the body and stay present with ourselves and stay in alignment with our values when making decisions about relationships.
Right.
Yeah.
If one of your values is entanglement,
Is that a
it's
value?
it's possible. It could be like, you know what? I believe in the sanctity of marriage. I believe that if you commit to it, then you have to stick with it forever, right? That could be something that you believe in. That could be a
I,
value set for you.
I would call that something different.
Whatever.
I'm not
Okay,
sure
call
what
it. Yeah,
longevity or loyalty or
yeah,
commitment or
whatever.
something.
But if
Yeah.
that's one of your values, and you look at that and you say, okay, I can't get that from this relationship anymore, then
Mhm.
don't be in the relationship anymore,
Yeah.
right? Don't
And it
expect that
sounds
person.
simplistic when we say, well, don't be in
It's
it then.
not.
We
It's
know that
not.
it's not.
It's not. And in
We've
fact,
each been divorced 3 times, we know, and multiple other
but
relationships.
but here's another thing too that I want to bring up is that when we do you remember when we started doing this work,
Yeah.
how much I struggled with the fact that relationships kept ending
Yeah.
instead of staying together. Remember that?
Hmm.
Right?
Yep.
And then all of a sudden, through a conversation with you, I kind of discovered, with your help and with your encouragement, that we're not in the business of saving relationships.
No.
We're in the business of empowering people to make the best choices for themselves. And if staying in that relationship is one of those choices, that's great. But if it's not, that's great too. Right.
Yeah.
And you should see oftentimes when we tell clients that they're like, what? Yeah, I'm not in the business of saving your relationship. That's not my decision to make. That's not my choice. Right. What I'm going to do, what I can do to help you is help you get clarity around what's important to you and why it's important, and how you can move through the world in a way that's much clearer and much more concise and much more empowered. That's the work. And then if you decide that this relationship is in alignment with all of that, then you can
Right.
stay, right? But that's
Yeah.
ultimately what it's about. And I do that with couples, how we pull away from each other in order to determine what our individuality is and who we are as people, and how we can move forward together in a way that honors the individuality and the autonomy of each other, right? That's
Yeah.
what's important. So I think ultimately, when we talk about duress, I think that yes, it absolutely happens 100%. There are people out in the world that are hurtful and angry and bitter and and they make decisions from that place, and it's very hurtful, and it's very um it's harmful, frankly. and
Mhm.
i and i and I feel for those people, and those people are definitely in situations of duress.
Yeah.
But I'm going to say that I don't think that's the majority of the situations that people are using the term poly under duress to describe.
Yeah. So we're just proposing maybe that poly under pressure is another way to kind of articulate that,
Yeah.
and
And
that
it
the
doesn't
pressure
feel
points are going to vary from relationship to relationship, and might be different in severity as well. Like there might be very little actual verbal pressure, but lots of emotional pressure going on, right? So yeah.
So let's end this with maybe a question.
Oh,
I'm going to
okay.
ask you this question. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm surprising her, folks. She doesn't know I'm doing this. This
It's
wasn't
all been a
planned.
surprise today.
Yeah, really. This wasn't planned. How can you tell the difference between being in a situation where it's poly under duress or in a situation where it's poly under pressure? What do you think you what do you think the audience should know in order to define the difference for themselves?
Feel like we've done that today already
Yeah,
through the
possibly.
examples. But I would say it's more likely to be under duress for someone who has very little control over their own life when the person who is making the decision also has very little empathy. So I would say the person who is feeling the duress feels they must comply in order to survive. And the person who is exerting the duress feels very little compassion for their partner's situation, needs, or potential challenges. And then poly under pressure would be the person who wants to be poly has been consistently advocating for that, maybe even making requests or setting boundaries for themselves, saying, you know, I have to do this. This is who I am. This is my identity. And I can't move forward in life without this. So for me, my boundary is going to be you need to be on board to be in a relationship with me, right? That's a boundary for them, for their well being. That is not duress. That is pressure, but it is not duress. I hope that sums it up really well.
Mm-hmm.
Would
Yeah,
you
it's
agree
clear
with
to
those?
me. Yes, yeah, I would agree with that. Nothing comes up for me that I could add to that. So,
Okay, let's wrap it up then.
yeah,
Thanks for being here. And remember,
choose love.
and keep it kind.
We'd love to hear your comments, questions, or topic suggestions. Don't forget to subscribe.
And you're invited to join our Facebook group, Empowered Poly Relationship Support.
You can reach out to us on our websites, greggmillion.com,
LeanneMillion.com,
and empoweredpoly.ca,
where you can check out our courses
and find more information.
and follow us on our socials.
Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. Yeah, nobody's going to listen to this anyway.
Why did we even bother?
Right?